So I think we are underestimating what humans end up doing. And maybe this is not the right path to get really reliable AI, but lots of smart people are working on all kinds of topics, reliability, being safe, and also being able to reason. It would be really hard to think that 10 years on the line, a lot of these issues wouldn't be addressed. And we would be designing an AI which would represent or even be weird and like exciting and dangerous, all kinds of different things. So we will be living in a world where we will have to account for all these different issues, both the positives and the negatives. That's exciting and dangerous at the same time. But I think that's what humans are curious beings, and we all try to be curious about things, and hopefully we'll be curious in a safe way.
Hi, I'm Boaz, founder and CEO of Augmented AI, and I'm excited that you're tuning into the Shift AI podcast, a show that explores what it takes to thrive and adapt to the changing workplace in the digital age of remote work and AI. In today's episode, I'm thrilled to have Professor Shyam Gollakota as our guest. Shyam is a professor of computer science and engineering at the University of Washington, where he leads the Mobile Intelligence Lab. He's also a serial entrepreneur, having spun out multiple companies from his academic research, and we'll be discussing Shyam's groundbreaking work on intelligent hearables, proactive speech agents, and his vision for the future of human-AI symbiosis. If you're interested in the exciting intersection of human augmentation, hardware, and artificial intelligence, you're in for a treat. We also want to send out a special thank you to Augmented AI for sponsoring this episode. This is going to be a great show, and we're super excited to have Shyam on today. We can't wait to hear from him. Let's get to it. All right, Shyam, thank you for being on the Shift AI podcast today. Really, really excited to talk about the technology that you're working on and learn a little bit more about you.
Thank you so much for having me.
So I always like to start with reading your background, and you've had a really, really interesting career. And what's special about today's episode is that, we have not really yet talked to an academic like yourself, someone that's been in academia for a really long time. You started at the Indian Institute of Technology in Madras. You then went to the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT. And then from there, you came to the UW, University of Washington, where you've been a professor. You've been a professor at the Paul G. Allen School of Computer Science and Engineering. And you're quite the entrepreneur too, spinning out companies from the UW. You were the co-founder of Jiva. Now you're the co-founder of Wavely Diagnostics. Have you spun out any other companies? Did I miss anything?
Oh, we did spin out Sound Life Sciences as well. That got acquired by Google in 2022.
Oh, great. So we'll talk more about that as well. But before we get into all the businesses and all the technology that you've been working on at the University of Washington, take me back to growing up. Talk about what it was like to grow up and how you got into computer science. Were your parents involved in computer science, or was it something that you just excelled at?
Quite the contrary, actually. My parents are not in computer science or computing of any kind. I grew up in a lower middle class family. I did not have a computer until I went to my undergrad. That's probably the first time I actually learned how to even type. I still remember that my first year of my undergrad, I was typing with my single finger. I don't know how many of you remember those earlier days when you type with single fingers and try to get work done. And you see all the people around you who are programming in C and C++. And I'm like, what exactly is include stdio? What is that? I don't even get it. So I was actually not that much into computing, primarily because I thought of it just as a lot of people were just learning programming languages and stuff. And I was like, I don't want to do that. I want to do something real. And I think one of the things which I learned at that point, talking to people and so on, was that computer science and programming is just not programming is not the end. It's actually a means, and it's actually a means to the end of solving real world problems. You can actually program things and you can write code that can have an impact on the real world. And that's what got me excited about computer science, algorithms, hardware, and everything else, which I've been working on since then.
Yeah. So I know that you've been a developer for a long time, but what was your first job when you were really young, like that you actually got a paycheck? Do you remember?
Growing up in India, the culture is kind of different from in the US, where kids actually do end up working a bit. So I did go to my undergrad and I immediately after that came to do my PhD
Yeah.
on the east side. And that effectively was my first paycheck because they were paying me to do something which I love, which is
Yeah.
build exciting things. And I then moved to UW, where again I'm getting paid to do something cool, which is invent the future, which is and work with some amazing students. I guess it's the best of all worlds, right?
Yeah. Well, we talked a lot about the stuff you were doing at UW, and we're going to get to that. But I didn't ask you about some of the early work that you were doing at MIT. Can you tell the audience a little bit about some of that?
It's been a while. I think back then I used to work on wireless systems like Wi-Fi, trying to improve their performance. This is back in the day before multiple antennas used to be part of almost every smartphone and every laptop. And we did some of the earlier work on trying to design network protocols and security systems that can exploit these multiple antennas and build these systems. Since then, clearly Wi-Fi has moved away significantly. Back then, Wi-Fi used to give you maybe like 54 megabit per second speeds. And we used to talk about pushing it to like 200 megabit per second. And people were like, do you even need that? And now people are talking about getting beyond 1 gigabit per second speed. So that is what I used to do back then.
Well, what's interesting and what intrigues me about the work that you're doing now is how hardware focused it is. We've talked to a lot of people that are working with large language models, doing a lot of AI stuff, but you're doing something that's very specific to hardware. Can you describe some of the research that you've been doing and how it's led up to some of the products that you're developing now?
Yeah, definitely. So I lead the mobile intelligence lab here in the Paul G. Allen School of Computer Science and Engineering. And our goal effectively is to create a symbiosis between humans, hardware, and artificial intelligence. And what I mean by that is when people think about AI, people think about the most popular thing is ChatGPT, which is basically a text-based interface. But if you think the future which we are envisioning is something where you don't really type in. You have an AI, which is a wearable or something which you already have which you're already wearing. And that's actually augmenting your sensors to potentially create superhuman capabilities, maybe super hearing, maybe supervision, all these capabilities which humans alone cannot really do. So the thing which we're wondering is, can we design AI systems which can augment the capability sensing and intelligence capabilities of humans in real time in a way which becomes invisible, so that the user doesn't really have to go and keep asking questions to the AI. And I think that's going to be the next big application domain where AI can really transform human experience, I think.
Describe some of the use cases. I saw a recent video on LinkedIn that you posted where two people were talking. One was in a crowded cafe, and then you were able to really focus in on the sounds of the person that you were talking to. Another one was at a fountain where there was a lot of water sounds, and they were walking and having this conversation. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, exactly. So the goal which we are trying to achieve in these set of projects is augmenting the human auditory perception with AI. As we all know, sound is such a fundamental medium through which we all perceive our environment. However, today we are surrounded by a cacophony of sounds that can end up overwhelming our senses. Right now, this morning, there was like someone who was trying to there was a honking noise on the car, and I was like, it woke me up, which I didn't really like. Mm-hmm. So what we are trying to build here are intelligent hearable systems. When I mean by hearable systems are AirPods and headsets and so on, that can give back some choice in terms of what sounds we want to hear in real world environments. For example, imagine you're walking with your friend and chatting on a busy street. Wouldn't it be great if you have a pair of headphones or earbuds that can learn how your friend sounds like and suppress all the street noise and all the other speech from the passers-by so that you can focus on just your friend? Or say you're in a park or you're admiring the sounds of the chirping birds and the water, and then you suddenly have like this obnoxious loud chatter of nearby group of people who just can't stop talking. Imagine if your headphones will give you the ability to focus on the sounds of the birds, but the rest of this noise can just go away. And that's exactly what we set out to achieve in our system.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's well, a couple questions about that. One is, we're both wearing glasses right now, right? And we know that there's been a lot of work done on headsets and glasses. Also, recently, in the AI community, we've seen a lot of pins as a kind of starting point for how you communicate. And a lot of it is through voice. So instead of chat, typing, we see these pins and we talk to them and so on. I know you have a position about that and you decided to do earpods first. So can you talk about what you think about that and where you think this hardware is going to start showing up, whether it's pendants or pins or, your position on that?
I think there have been a lot of interfaces, right? Like glasses, pins, and headsets. Each of them is a different topic. I can go on talking about the different trade-offs over there. But let me first focus on why I think headsets and AirPods is potentially a really amazing place to augment intelligence for humans. So if you think about what's happened in the past decade, we have witnessed two key technological trends. First, we have seen significant advances in noise cancelling headsets and earbuds, where you can do really good noise cancellation. The latest Apple AirPods just basically cancels out all the noise. Second, deep learning, as you all know, has enabled human-like, or is close to enabling human-like intelligence to a large extent. And these two trends present opportunities for creating the future of intelligent hearables with real-world capabilities that have so far been in the realm of science fiction. So this is actually the right time because, right, as you walk on the street, you see so many people. I was walking from my car to my office and I was wearing my AirPods. You see people walking around with headsets. So it's such a socially acceptable thing.
Yeah.
You don't need to change the behavior and the habits of the people. It's already there on the human itself. It's very private. Only you can hear what's actually happening. So it's already there. You don't need to change any behavior of the human. You don't need to create new habits. So I think it's a perfect interface to create intelligence and augment intelligence, which does not really require replacing a smartphone or creating a completely new interface itself. There are, of course, challenges because an AirPod is really, really small. It has a very tiny battery. So trying to run some of these large language models on it, trying to get intelligence is kind of challenging. And that's where my group is actually trying to design very efficient neural networks as well as applications which can really be enabling lots of exciting applications. So that's kind of the reason why I think noise cancelling headsets or earbuds is probably the right place. People already have them. So if you can just augment intelligence onto them, either to manipulate your acoustic scene or to basically potentially even like have an agent running on it. It already is there. So it's easier to incorporate additional features onto it and augment intelligence.
Before we go further with the interview, I want to take a moment to tell you about one of our podcast sponsors, Augmented AI, and how they are transforming businesses with Gen AI solutions. Augmented AI specializes in helping organizations uncover and address internal workflow challenges that Gen AI can solve. Their comprehensive process starts by identifying and prioritizing business problems, and then assessing each based on value, effort, and risk. Once a problem is selected, the Augmented AI team tests and validates the solution to ensure that it works. Only after this thorough validation do they draft technical requirements, which serve as a blueprint for building and deploying the solutions. The real beauty of partnering with Augmented AI is that they don't just stop at strategy and feasibility studies. They actually stand up the solutions and manage them for you so you can focus on what you do best. If you're interested in experiencing this innovative approach to deploying Gen AI solutions, visit simplyaugmented.ai and click on the Learn More button. That's simplyaugmented.ai. Now back to the episode. Can you talk a little bit about what's going on underneath the hood in some of the tech that you're developing and how you're able to make that work? What is the AI that is happening there?
So just take the example which I was saying, right? Like you need to learn how your friend sounds like or how a bird sounds like. This kind of a capability is really not possible with today's noise cancelling headsets because they can either cancel out all the sounds or they pass everything through in the transparency mode, for example. But to achieve what we want, we first need a high-level intelligence to identify all the different sounds in the environment. Then we need to separate out the target sound or the target human from all the interfering sounds. And if this is not hard enough, whatever sounds we are extracting need to be synced with the visual senses and in terms of what we are seeing itself. And what this means is that the neural network algorithms must process the sounds in real time in under 1/100th of a millisecond or 1/100th of a second, which is pretty stringent requirement
Yeah.
because you can't really wait for a second. Today, if you think about a chat box, you can basically type in a whole query, wait for a few seconds, and then get back a response. You can't really do that with this kind of an applications. So we have to basically innovate across multiple dimensions. We need to innovate in terms of designing efficient neural network algorithms. We also need to innovate in terms of figuring out what is embedded systems and hardware itself. Hardware is going to be an extremely key component in all these things. And finally, in terms of what kind of an applications can you enable when you do these kind of things, it has to be something which is meaningful for the user and something which the user would want to actually use.
What is the name of the company / product for this use case for the earpods?
We haven't yet set up a company, but we are planning on doing one. But each of these different capabilities, we're calling it by a different name. For example, the ability to pick and choose different sounds, like I want to listen to the sound of the ocean and removing the humans, we're calling that semantic hearing. The ability to focus on a specific human or a specific subset of humans and removing every other chatter, we're calling that target speech hearing, and so on. So we're creating all these different capabilities, and the goal, it's a pretty interdisciplinary work because we need to work across the stack in hardware, software, algorithms, and applications itself, and also deploy it with users as well to see how the user experience is. But this is, I think, it's very exciting because I think that this is potentially going to incorporate it into billions of AirPods and headsets, which we already use in the next generation of these things, as well as people who have hearing loss. I think hearing aids, one of the problems people have with hearing loss is that effectively, if you're in a noisy environment, even with a hearing aid, it's extremely bad, your experience to interact and understand what's happening. And this kind of an AI can be transformative for people with hearing loss because you can start designing intelligent hearing aids which can understand humans, understand what sounds are coming from, have a spatial and semantic understanding of the scene, and can in real time manipulate your acoustic scene itself. The biggest challenge which we are addressing right now is hardware, which is how do you ensure that this can run on the device itself and not drain the battery. You don't want the AirPod to die in like 10 minutes. It has to run for at least a whole day while enabling these capabilities. And that's where a lot of our innovation is coming in.
Gotcha. So yeah, I think that's an incredible use case. I've talked to so many people that hearing aids are just not working for them because of that exact problem. So as the director of within the college, I really am intrigued by this idea of human, hardware, and AI and the combination of those three things. What are some other research projects that are happening, within the university that kind of are falling under your directorship and kind of fit within those kind of categories?
So one of the things which we are halfway through building up a prototype is what we are calling proactive speech agents. Primarily because imagine that you're having headsets or AirPods and having a conversation, or I'm actually going about my day, and an agent where I don't need to ask a question, but based on the conversations I'm having with people, it anticipates what I need and potentially provides me the right feedback or the right information in the least disruptive way. I don't want it to keep talking over my conversation with someone else or distracting my chain of thought. It has to provide the information I need. It has to anticipate what I need based on all the conversations I'm having, all the speech it's actually hearing, and then provide information in the least disruptive way possible. I think this is the future of AI agents to a large extent, which is how can you use these proactive agents to augment, for example, human intelligence, human memory, for example, a lot of maybe human creativity as well. Because a lot of the things about creativity is asking about the right question, right?
Yeah.
If you ask the right question, the answer generally follows. And the problem with ChatGPT is that today you need to ask it the right question. If you don't ask it the right question, you don't get the right answer. And that's why people do a lot of engineering in terms of asking right questions and so on.
Prompt engineering, yeah.
Exactly. So trying to basically figure out if there's a way in which the AI agents can just figure out what I need based on the conversation I'm having with you. If, for example, if I forgot the word prompt engineering, it whispers into my ear, you mean prompt engineering. So I can actually use that in my phrase. It's a simple example, but you can see where this kind of a proactive agent can go in terms of helping people who are having memory loss or anything at all, which is basically what I mean by augmenting intelligence and memory and so on, where I don't need to ask questions. It basically anticipates what I need and provides me the information I actually need, and speaks into my ear based on what I need, based on the context.
Yeah, that is really interesting. It sounds a lot like a producer in the ear of an anchor on the news, letting them know kind of what's happening, prompting them a little bit about, hey, this is coming up. But for memory loss or for people that, have Alzheimer's, or, there's just so many interesting applications for that to change the way that people interact with others. That's fascinating.
And I think it's one of those things where it has to be not disruptive. Let's say I'm having a thought process with you. It shouldn't suddenly say something which would completely destroy my thought process and take me in a completely different way. So I think that's exciting in terms of like lots of research opportunities and challenging technical problems. And it's just not anymore computing. You also need to understand psychology and how people actually end up reacting to changing topics. And it's kind of interesting because if you think about it, it's an agent, which is a third party in the conversation I'm having with someone else. And you can see how when you have multiple people in a group, conversations tend to change topics. They basically tend to move around. And is that okay for an AI agent to do? There are lots of exciting things over there in terms of applications, what we can do, as well as like just basic questions of what it means to be human, I think.
And now, before we dive deeper, I want to take a quick moment and tell you a little bit about one of our podcast partners. As a listener of this show, I know you're trying to stay on top of all things AI and tech, which is why you have to check out the amazing GeekWire podcast, produced by GeekWire and hosted by Todd Bishop. It's a treasure of insights featuring industry leaders and the latest tech trends that are shaping our world, and the perfect companion podcast to Shift AI. GeekWire podcast is where technology meets curiosity and covers the world of technology, startups, and geek culture. Expand your tech horizons and join the conversation. Tune into the GeekWire podcast today, a perfect complement to our own discussions here. Don't miss out. Follow the GeekWire podcast on Apple Podcast, Spotify, or your favorite listening app. Now back to the episode. When you think back on your career, either now or in the past, people that have really influenced you. So who, alive or not alive, would you want to be in your ear as your agent, as your mentor agent at all times?
I think I've been really incredibly lucky when I moved to UW in terms of having incredible support from the computer science department. Hank Levy, Ed Lazaska, they've been extremely helpful for me. Sometimes when you're young, not when I'm young, I'm still young. I at least act like I'm young. It's easy to be impulsive, and giving me advice not to be impulsive is always a good thing to actually. I think for me, the agent would probably be the most helpful in terms of just letting me to calm down and not be impulsive and just take a breath. You know what I'm saying?
Just a reminder exactly. In the back of your mind. Yeah, that's amazing.
But I do think that this is where you can probably create like different personas for these proactive agents, depending on the context. There's of course going to be.
I'm going to a party, make sure that I'm funny.
We say that in a kind of a funny way, but I do think that there are lots of people who have social anxiety to be in like social settings. People, it's one of those technologies where you can imagine it being used for both positive and negative. But the good news is that people can see you wearing AirPods, so they know that you're potentially using an AI aid. But as with normal things, like you walk around with wearing AirPods, it's normalized. And if it is predominantly designed in a way in which it's actually augmenting people's capabilities and making them better humans, I think that we have to see how society moves along with it. But I definitely think that it's potentially going to have a positive impact on how we interact with each other, I think.
If it works, you can imagine people having devices in their ears at all times. Everybody might have ear enhancing devices. I can totally see that.
I think that sometimes, I keep going in two ways for this particular thing, which is like, I think sometimes you want to be in a situation where you don't want to lose touch with your real world, right? You don't want everything to be augmented, which is one of the reasons why we all have music, we play. But the thing which is also interesting is that with sound, unlike vision, We already do that all the time. We go to a gym, be fit. Imagine going to a group gym where everyone is doing high intensity workout and the music is turned off. You're hearing everyone like panting and stuff. It can be a weird sound to basically have, but the music ends up changing something in you, right? Like the way you're already augmenting the acoustic environment to a large extent, and that ends up changing the chemicals produced and your ability to work out really well. Same thing, if you're feeling a little bit down, you listen to happy music. For some reason, sound and mental health have been so closely intertwined, and humans have evolved to do that. And other thing which I like to tell people is that the pace of evolution, pace of how much we have advanced in our society in terms of the amount of noise we have created in our environment. Imagine, for example, the car noise and all these things. If you think about humans 500 years ago, I don't think they had to deal with any of this noise, right? And it's not enough time for the human evolution to basically adapt to it. So these devices can be thought of as like an aid to help us adapt better to the world, which is way more noisy than we are originally designed for. You can see birds are actually in cities because of the noise. They can't really perform well, or they can't really operate well in big cities because of the noise in the cities. It's probably true for humans as well, right? So I think this is one place where AI can really help in terms of making the experience a little bit better.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you've been thinking about this stuff for a really long time. I would consider you a futurist. I mean, as you think about what this future is going to look like, I like to end the show with a question about, 2 words that would describe the future, but then I want you to elaborate, because I want you to kind of help the audience think way ahead in terms of what a future of work, future of AI, future of society could look like with all of these devices. So what would your 2 words be?
I think that the 2 words I would probably use is science fiction. For a long time, I think we have watched lots of movies where lots of exciting AIs have existed, both for the good and the bad. And for a lot of time, it's actually been fiction. It's actually not been possible. While current systems like ChatGPT are not yet there, they're not completely reliable and so on. But I think in the larger scheme of things, if you think about what happened 10 years ago versus what's happening right now, 10 years ago, we just started to do, whether it's a cat or a dog, based on images. Now we're able to generate text, which to a normal human would look like it's a normal conversation being generated by another human being. It can't really do math yet. It can't really do perfect reasoning, which you would expect from a PhD, for example, or someone who's like really well-known and expert. But we have come a long way in 10 years, and people tend to underestimate the pace of change which has happened. 10 years ago, when I listened to people talk about AI, it was like, yeah, it can do cats and dogs, big deal. It can't really do human-like things. We've come a long way in just 10 years. 10 years is such a short period for this kind of an AI to happen. So I think we are underestimating what humans end up doing, and we have seen that this path exists. Maybe this is not the right path to get like really reliable AI, but a lot more people are working on this, and lots of smart people are working on all kinds of topics: reliability, being safe, and so on, and also being able to reason. It would be really hard to think that 10 years on the line, a lot of these issues wouldn't be addressed, and we would be designing an AI which would represent or even be weird and like exciting and dangerous, all kinds of different things. So we will be living in a world where we will have to account for all these different issues, both the positives and the negatives, just like we had to deal with internet and how that changed the world, the politics and everything else. That's exciting and dangerous at the same time, but I think that's what humans are curious beings, and we all try to be curious about things, and hopefully we'll be curious in a safe way.
It's amazing to think of what 10 years from now might look like. And if you were just to wave your magic wand and just kind of squint your eyes and think about that future, what would be an exciting thing 10 years from now that we don't have now that could be that step jump that you've described?
I think it's going to be human AI augmentation, where it's going to be giving humans superpowers to a large extent. whether it's superpowers in terms of the way we sense the world, the way we augment our reality, the way we augment our intelligence, the knowledge, the creativity. I think it's going to probably have a lot of impact on automating jobs and so on, probably to a lot of negative extent. But I think a positive force of AI is going to be enhancing the creativity of humans significantly. I think that, if anything, would probably be the biggest positive impact of AI in the next 10 years.
Well, Shyam, I am so intrigued by this subject, and I really want to talk to you again as you're developing more of your research. Thank you so much for being on the show. I really got a lot out of it, and I think the audience did too. So I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
That's a wrap. Thanks for tuning in. It was truly a pleasure to have Shyam as our guest today. Shyam's passion for creating a symbiosis between humans, hardware, and AI is not only inspiring, but also gives us a glimpse into the exciting future where technology seamlessly augments our capabilities. If you want to stay connected to Shyam, you can find him on LinkedIn. If you're interested in his groundbreaking work, definitely connect with him and keep up with his posts and activities online. I continue to be amazed by the guests we've had on the show, and I'm excited about the ones joining us in the near future. I truly appreciate you spending your time with us. Thank you for listening to this episode, and don't forget to subscribe to the Shift AI podcast for more exciting interviews, and to the Augmented AI weekly newsletter for updates on how AI can help you scale your business. The Shift AI podcast is syndicated by GeekWire, and we are grateful to have the show sponsored by Augmented AI. Our theme music was created by Dave Angel.